Welcome! Allie T's life is about to be drawn out. So the creation of Allie began with my dad Bill and my mom Kathy meeting. My dad had a crazy mustache and he was like, "You, I like you. I'm single with 3 kids, but I hope you like me too." And I guess she did, so they got together. We went down the road of marriage and my mom got preggo pretty soon. That was my sister, Angela. We continued to get married. My sister was actually at the wedding, VIP wedding guest. Then my mom got pregnant again with me not too long after that. My dad was like, "What are you talking about? Again?" Then there was me, Alicia. My name is not Allison, it's not Alicia, it's Alicia. Alicia. So my siblings are Adam, Amy, Andrew, and Angela. They're all A's. Then there's my mom, who is a mutt of Italian and a lot of white. My dad was Colombian and a bunch of different white. So that makes me white, Italian, mutt, hick, Colombian. I was born in Miami with Cuban food and Miami accents. If you don't know what a Miami accent is, YouTube shit Miami girls say. I've accumulated a million nicknames. Allie Magoo is from my brother. I love that one. I also love the one that I made, which is Allie with 2 eyes. That is not my real name, obviously. It's Alicia. So when I was 6 or 7, I moved to West Palm. Definitely didn't fit in West Palm. Everybody was kind of country and sheltered, and I was very city girl and had a really bad mouth. Needless to say, I spent a lot of time in the principal's office, which they didn't really mind because I filed paperwork pretty fast. I was a tomboy. I liked to ride my bike. I used to catch lizards and hang them with little pieces of weed. Yeah, I know, that's terrible. Despite always being in trouble for my mouth, I always got A's, so the teachers finally figured out it was because I was bored, and I went into the gifted program. Middle school really wasn't too bad for me. In the 6th and 7th grade year, I had a lot of friends. I was pretty popular, mostly because I was a class clown, and I got in trouble all the time, which is a great source of entertainment. It was my worst year because a popular girl in school decided that she didn't like me anymore, so I used to sit by myself in the cafeteria. That's pretty much when the bullying started. I got phone calls telling me I was ugly. I got AIMs telling me they hated me and that I was a lesbian because my best friend was this one girl, Amanda, and I was always with her. They would call me duckface because of my lip shape. They would chase me down the road when I would get picked up by my grandmother. They would trip me. They would throw food at me. Once they started yelling loud enough for my grandmother to hear, I started meeting her down the road at Amanda's house. Good news was everybody that was bullying me was going to Royal Palm and I was going to Wellington High School. So when I went to Wellington, I was actually much happier. I was still sort of ghetto from my middle school, but eventually I became preppy like everyone else and I fit in. 9th grade is when I actually started to realize that I was kind of pretty, that I wasn't really just the funny girl that everyone was friends with. Bullying completely stopped in high school, and this is where I met JJ and Janelle, who are still some of my best friends. Janelle, you've actually met in the Whisper Challenge among other videos. JJ, you can actually see in a movie called What Now? It's on Hulu, Amazon, everywhere. I became a punk rock chick. I listened to emo, screamo, hardcore. I went to all these shows that JJ put on. I used to take the photographs for JJ's bands. My dream college was University of Miami because obviously I was born and raised in Miami. The problem was that it was actually really hard to get into, and my junior year was probably one of the hardest years. I had the most AP load. It was really hard to take only gifted classes. I was really stressed out. And I realized that maybe I wouldn't get into UM. And I thought, I actually want to be a photographer, which isn't as hard to get into as UM. At the end of my junior year, I had my first boyfriend, John Barbie. I was super in love, which eventually ruined my life because he was actually really, really mean to me. But through knowing him, I met his brother and we ended up being best friends and we talked each other through our breakups and we ended up liking each other. We dated for a couple of months and I also thought I was super in love again, which I was. He ended up breaking my heart pretty much just as badly. At this point, I got really depressed and I wanted nothing to do with school. I ended up dropping out my senior year and getting a high school diploma online. Good thing is, photography school doesn't care about your grades, so I moved to Santa Barbara, California. My sister lived in LA, which was cool because I had really bad social anxiety, so I would actually go and visit her 2 or 3 times a week. Eventually, I ran out of money, loans or not, and I had to move back home to Florida after a year, and I enrolled into a community college. I needed to get a job to pay for school, and I ended up not being able to find one. I was overqualified everywhere I went as soon as they saw that Brooks was on my resume. When I went back to community college, I didn't know what I wanted my major to be. At that point, both of my ex-boyfriends had really serious drug problems. I studied substance abuse counseling for 3 years. Meanwhile, I was running out of money, and the thing I could do in the least amount of time to make the most amount of money was aesthetics. I graduated from that school in 4 months and got a job in Coconut Grove in Miami at a waxing spa. For the first 3 weeks, I drove every day from Port St. Lucie to Miami, and then I actually stayed with my sister on the weekends for about 3 months with her 4 kids in Fort Lauderdale. Until I could afford my own place in Coral Gables, I got a studio apartment and was still taking part-time classes in Port St. Lucie on my days off. I got really close to my sister and her kids, and I ended up going to all of my nephew's football games in my spare time. After about a year, I realized that aesthetics was not really a career, so I ended up going to the Florida State workforce, hoping to get grant money to go back to school. This is where I found out about medical lab technology. Meanwhile, I still needed money, so I actually went to bartending school and got my first real job at Vic and Angelo's. This was a huge struggle for me since I still had really bad social anxiety, but I pushed through it because I needed the money. I was still pretty broke. I couldn't really do anything except for sit around in the sun on the beach, which of course made me look really great, but I got a lot of visible sun damage in the form of precancerous moles. I've had a bunch of them cut out, and now I am eternally pale. In 2012, my grandfather died, and he was a cop and a Marine. I got to keep his dog tags. He also happened to be a financial genius, which helped me and my parents move back to West Palm Beach, where I started my clinicals at Good Samaritan, studied hard and blew through my last year at IRSC, and I happened to graduate magna cum laude. Now to nerd life. I currently work in a lab with poop and pee and blood, and I work in a blood bank, I do hematology, I do urinalysis, I do coag, I do blood chemistries, I wear a lab coat and gloves, and no, nobody wears the goggles. Yes, it stinks, but everybody gets used to it just like your gynecologist does. Throughout all of this, I've had a pretty terrible love life. Seems to me it's actually pretty hard to find somebody who doesn't smoke, doesn't do drugs, doesn't smoke pot. Seems like I'm the only one on earth who doesn't have some kind of vice. At 27 years old, I've never done anything. My life is wild enough, I don't need any help. For the first time in my life, I had enough money to save up for major purchases like a car. So in December of last year, I bought my first car. Meanwhile, in my spare time, I was kind of still wondering, what do I really want to do with my life? Yes, the lab pays my bills, but most of my spare time was spent watching makeup videos on YouTube. Most of the time it was Halloween tutorials, which ended up turning into pretty much any makeup video. And I spent a lot of my time just learning different things to do with makeup. Since most of my life I was a tomboy, I was definitely a late bloomer as far as makeup was concerned, and I just became obsessed with learning about it. Arts was always my passion, so I thought to myself, okay, so I did photo, and then I went into editing photos, and then I was really interested in skin and makeup, which I did the esthetician thing, and then I did the bartending, which actually made me better with people, and I learned a lot of psychology, which made me better with people. Slowly but surely, my social anxiety went completely down, to where I was actually able to talk to doctors and nurses on a regular basis in my job that I have now. I feel like all of this prepared me for YouTube. I started regularly following Jenna Marbles and Julian Solomita, and they became my inspiration. Once I had the idea in my head that I could make YouTube videos, I just became overwhelmingly passionate about it. It seemed like the best place and the only place that you can really be yourself. Creating my YouTube name is actually pretty easy. My initials are AT, so LAT was pretty simple. I put my money where my mouth was, and I bought myself an iMac 5K for editing videos. I chose to spell it TEA because, number one, I love tea in any form it comes in, and because my personality is constantly calling people out for their bullshit. Which makes me a little frog that doesn't mind its business, with a really dirty mouth. So the happy ending of my story is my bills are in order, my work is in order, my friends are in order, my love life is never in order, but I have YouTube, and my passion is that. So I'm pretty happy at 27.